It started with an anonymous message. Your wife is cheating on you. Check room 806 at the Grandview Hotel. I almost ignored it. Anonymous texts, especially ones this dramatic, belonged in bad movies, not in my life. Sarah and I had been married for 7 years. We had a home, a life, a rhythm. Sure, things hadn't been perfect lately. She was more distant, lost in thoughts she didn't share, her phone always just out of reach. But I told myself every couple had rough patches. I nearly deleted the message right then, but something made me pause. A tiny, insidious whisper in the back of my mind. What if? I stared at the screen, heart hammering. It was probably just a prank. Some bitter ex from years ago. Someone with a grudge. And yet, that night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah lay beside me, her back turned, her breathing slow and even. I tried to tell myself that nothing had changed, that she was still the woman I had built a life with. But my mind refused to settle. I reached for her phone on the nightstand. Locked. Of course. I set it down, exhaling slowly. Tomorrow, I would go to the Grandview Hotel. Not because I believed the message. Not because I was paranoid. Just to prove myself wrong. The Grandview Hotel was the kind of place where businessmen met their mistresses and people went to disappear for a night. It wasn't seedy, but it wasn't exactly the Ritz either. I sat in my car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Room 806. I told myself I wouldn't go inside. I'd come this far only to prove the message wrong, to prove that I was being ridiculous, that Sarah was at work or at home, like always. But I wasn't stupid. Sarah had been different lately. Distracted. Smiling at texts she wouldn't let me see. Long meetings that stretched into the evening. She had stopped reaching for me at night. And now, here I was. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my ears as I made my way inside. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. When the doors slid open on the 8th floor, the hallway was empty, silent, save for the low hum of the hotel air conditioning. I stood in front of room 806, my hands clenched into fists. I didn't knock. Instead, I leaned in, my ear barely an inch from the door. At first, I heard nothing but my own ragged breath. Then, soft laughter. Hers. My stomach twisted. My vision blurred at the edges. Then a man's voice, low and intimate. A murmur. The unmistakable sound of skin against skin. I took a step back, swallowing against the bile rising in my throat. The anonymous message hadn't been a prank. Sarah was in that room, and she wasn't alone. I stood there, frozen, as reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. Sarah, my wife, the woman I had built my life around, in that room, with someone else. For a moment, my body refused to move. My fingers curled into fists, my breath came in short, sharp gasps. A part of me wanted to kick the door in, to catch them in the act, to make her see what she had done to me, what she was destroying. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, couldn't bear it. I didn't want to see her like that. I didn't want to hear her moan someone else's name. I turned and walked away. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. The elevator ride back to the lobby was a blur. I barely registered the receptionist's polite smile as I walked past. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I sucked in a breath, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside me. My mind reeled, spinning through every moment of the past few months, searching for the signs I had ignored. Had she ever truly loved me? Was it just lust? Or had she been planning to leave me? I reached my car and leaned against it, my hands gripping the roof as I fought against the urge to scream. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and for a split second, I thought, hoped, it was her. It wasn't. It was another message from the anonymous number. Now you know. But this isn't just about you. I stared at the words, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. What the hell did that mean? I swallowed hard and typed a reply. Who are you? The response came almost instantly. Someone who thought you deserved to know the truth. But there's more to this than just an affair. Look deeper. Look deeper? As if what I had just witnessed wasn't enough to shatter me. I clenched my jaw, anger rising through the pain. Whoever was behind these messages knew more than they were telling me. And now, I was going to find out the whole truth. I sat in my car outside the Grandview Hotel, the message still glowing on my screen. Look deeper. My hands trembled as I tightened my grip on the phone. My world had already shattered. What more could there be? What was this stranger trying to tell me? I could have ignored them. I could have driven home, poured myself a drink, and let the betrayal fester. But the anger in my chest was growing, twisting into something sharper. If Sarah had been lying about this, what else had she been keeping from me? I had to know. I took a deep breath and did something I never thought I'd do. I texted back, "What else do you know?" The response was immediate. "Start with the man she was with." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to picture him, the shadow in that room with my wife. I hadn't seen his face, but I had heard his voice. Deep, confident, the sound of a man who knew he had one. I needed a name. I pulled out of the parking lot, my mind spinning through possibilities. Sarah's coworkers, her so-called business meetings, the networking events she had started attending without me. And then, it clicked. There was a man she had mentioned before, a name that had started appearing in her conversations too often. Someone from her work, a business associate she had recently partnered with. Daniel Carter. I clenched my jaw. It had to be him. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove straight to my office, my pulse pounding in my ears. I worked in finance, and Sarah handled corporate partnerships. That meant there were records, emails, deals, a paper trail. I wasn't just going to find out if she was sleeping with him. I was going to find out exactly what they were up to. Because this wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was something bigger, and I was going to expose them both. By the time I reached my office, the anger had settled into something colder, something focused. If Sarah and Daniel Carter thought they could play me for a fool, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I unlocked my computer and got to work. Sarah and I had built our careers side by side. She handled client relations, while I managed financial strategies. Our work overlapped more often than not, and that meant access, shared projects, business transactions, records that would tell me exactly what had been going on behind my back. I started with her emails. Most of them were routine, conference calls, partnership updates, business reports. But then I saw his name, Daniel Carter. At first, it was harmless. They had started working together 6 months ago. Professional exchanges, meeting confirmations, client discussions. But then, the tone changed. I scrolled further, my pulse tightening. The emails became more personal. Subtle at first, inside jokes, casual remarks. Then came the late-night exchanges. The shift from looking forward to our meeting to, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And then I found it. A message from 2 weeks ago. "Daniel, everything is lining up perfectly. Once the deal goes through, we're set. Just a little longer. Sarah, I know. I can't wait. You and me, finally." The air left my lungs. This wasn't just an affair. They were planning something. I checked the details of the deal they were discussing. A merger. A major business acquisition that I had been helping negotiate. A deal that would funnel millions into the hands of investors, board members, and anyone pulling the right strings behind the scenes. It hit me like a truck. They weren't just sleeping together. They were using me. Sarah had stayed with me just long enough to secure her future, to make sure she and Daniel got what they needed before they cut me loose. I sat back, gripping the edge of my desk as the full weight of the betrayal crashed over me. They thought they were in control. They thought I didn't know. But now, I did. And I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make them regret ever thinking they could outplay me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the dim glow of my office, piecing together their betrayal like a crime scene investigator. The emails, the deals, the stolen moments. I laid it all out in front of me, turning my pain into precision. Sarah and Daniel thought they were clever, that I was blind, that I would stay oblivious long enough for them to secure their future and leave me with nothing. They had underestimated me. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to throw accusations or demand explanations. No, that would be too easy for her. She'd cry, lie, manipulate, twist the truth into something unrecognizable. I knew how she operated. Instead, I would let them believe they were winning. For now, I showered, dressed, and drove home like nothing had changed. Sarah was already up, sitting at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee. She looked up as I walked in, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I wondered how she could do it, how she could look me in the eye after leaving a hotel room with another man. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "You were out early." I forced a small smile, sliding into my usual chair. "Had some things to take care of at the office." She nodded, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "You've been working a lot lately." I almost laughed. Me? I'd been working a lot? Was that her attempt at shifting the narrative, making me feel guilty? But I played along. "Yeah," I said, sipping my coffee. "You know how it is. Business never sleeps." She smiled at that, just a little, and for the first time, I saw it. The relief. She thought I didn't know. That was good. That was exactly what I needed. Because if Sarah and Daniel wanted to play games, they had no idea who they were up against. I was about to turn their whole world upside down. I spent the next few days pretending not to notice the way Sarah smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, pretending not to hear the late-night calls she took in the other room, pretending not to care when she told me she'd be working late again. Each lie she told, each excuse she made, I swallowed it down with a smile. I played the fool. But behind the scenes, I was tightening the noose. I started with Daniel. I knew where he worked, who he did business with, and most importantly, where he kept his secrets. Thanks to my position, I had access to the financial reports connected to our company's upcoming merger. At first glance, everything seemed normal. But as I dug deeper, the cracks began to show. Hidden transactions, offshore accounts, large sums of money being shuffled under different names. Fraud. Daniel wasn't just screwing my wife. He was screwing the company. And now, I had proof. I documented everything. Emails, wire transfers, discrepancies in contracts. I made copies, stored them safely in multiple locations. Then I reached out to someone I knew would be interested in this information, our company's legal team. Of course, I did it anonymously. Daniel Carter's entire career was now one signature away from crumbling. But I wasn't done yet. Sarah still thought she had me wrapped around her finger, and I was going to let her believe that, right up until the moment I ripped the ground out from under her. The beauty of a well-laid trap is patience. I watched, waited, and let Sarah and Daniel move freely, never suspecting that every step they took was leading them straight to their downfall. Then, I made my first move. It was a simple message, just a single line, sent from an anonymous email to Daniel's corporate account. "You're being watched." That was all it took. Within hours, Daniel started to panic. He doubled back on his emails, canceled meetings, and even called Sarah multiple times while she was home. I saw the way her face tensed when she read his messages, how she excused herself to take his calls in another room. She was worried. She should be. The next morning, I struck again. A second email. This time, I attached one of the financial records I had uncovered, highlighting the discrepancies, the kind of information that could put him behind bars if it fell into the right hands. Leave now. Cut her loose. Before it's too late. And just like that, the cracks in their perfect little affair began to show. Sarah came home late that evening, her face drawn, her movements restless. She poured herself a glass of wine, downed it too quickly, then poured another. I leaned casually against the kitchen counter, watching. "Long day?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just work stress. Anything I can help with?" I asked, my tone light, knowing she'd never dare tell me the truth. She shook her head, rubbing her temples. "No, it's just complicated." I bet it was. That night, she barely touched her phone. When she did, it was only to check for messages that never came. Because Daniel wasn't responding, and he never would. By the following morning, Daniel Carter had vanished, cleared out his office, deleted his social media, and disconnected his personal phone. Sarah had no idea why, but I did, because I had made sure of it. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She tossed and turned, her phone screen lighting up every few minutes as she checked for messages that wouldn't come. I lay beside her, silent, listening to her breath hitch with every unanswered call. By morning, she was unraveling. She barely spoke at breakfast, just stirred her coffee in slow, distracted circles. The confident, calculated woman who had been playing me for months, maybe years, was slipping. And I wasn't done yet. I waited until she left for work before I sent the final blow. A single envelope, left on her desk at the office. No name, no return address. Inside, I placed copies of everything. Her emails to Daniel, the financial records, the evidence of their affair. And at the very bottom, one final note. He's gone. You're next. It didn't take long. Less than an hour later, she called me. Her voice was shaking. Ethan, I need to talk to you. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch, savoring the desperation in her tone. What's wrong? A pause. Then, softer. Can we meet for lunch? I almost laughed. After everything she had done, after all her lies, she still thought she could manipulate me. But I agreed, because I wanted to watch her break. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes late, not because I was busy, but because I wanted her to wait. To sit there, twisting in her own anxiety, wondering if I would even show up. Sarah was already at the table, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She looked up the second I walked in, her eyes wide and desperate. I took my time, pulled out my chair, sat down. Ethan, she said, her voice carefully controlled, but I could hear the strain underneath. I held up a hand, stopping her. No small talk. Just say what you need to say. She swallowed hard, gripping the stem of her glass. Something's going on. Daniel, he's gone. He's not answering my calls. His office is cleared out. And someone, her breath hitched, someone left me a file. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. A file? Her fingers tightened around the glass. With emails, transactions, things no one should have access to. She leaned in, lowering her voice. I think someone's trying to set me up. I almost laughed. Set her up? No, Sarah. This was all you. I just made sure the right people noticed. I let the silence stretch before finally speaking. And why are you telling me this? She blinked, caught off guard. Because I need your help. That was it. The moment she realized she was losing. Not once did she say she was innocent. Not once did she say she didn't cheat, didn't steal, didn't betray me. She just wanted me to save her. I leaned forward, my voice calm and deliberate. You want my help? Like how you helped me while you were screwing Daniel in hotel rooms. She flinched. I reached into my pocket and placed something on the table between us. A single sheet of paper. Her face paled as she read the words at the top. Divorce agreement. No, she whispered. Yes, I said. This is me helping you, Sarah. I'm giving you one last chance to walk away before this gets worse. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, please. I never meant. I stood, buttoning my jacket. Don't lie to me again. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The restaurant felt suffocating, but for the first time in months, I could breathe. As I turned to leave, I heard her break. Her soft, choked sob as the weight of everything finally crashed down on her. But I didn't stop. She had already lost me. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. Sarah had spent so much time lying, scheming, and betraying that she never saw this coming. She thought she could manipulate her way out of anything, that I would be too blind, too weak to see the truth. She was wrong. By the time she left the restaurant, I had already put everything in motion. The divorce papers weren't just a warning, they were final. My lawyer had them pre-filed. All Sarah had to do was sign, or fight me in court, where I would make sure every detail of her affair and fraud became public record. She knew what was at stake. I made sure of it. That night, she called me. 5 times. I didn't answer. Then the text came. Ethan, please. Let's talk. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I never stopped loving you. Lies. All of it. I blocked her number. The next day, I received confirmation. Daniel Carter had officially resigned from his position. He wouldn't be facing fraud charges yet, but he had been blacklisted from several major firms. His reputation was ruined. Sarah was next. I sent one final email, this time to her boss. Not an accusation, just a few carefully selected documents. Enough to raise questions. enough to ensure she would never be trusted again. She wanted a new life? She could have it, just not at my expense. Sarah didn't sign the divorce papers right away. Instead, she tried everything: calls from unknown numbers, emails, even showing up at my office. She begged. She cried. She swore she could explain. But I didn't need her explanations. I already had the truth. I ignored her. Then, the inevitable happened. Her boss found out everything. About the shady financial deals, about Daniel, about how she had used company resources for her personal gain. The company launched an internal investigation, and within a week, Sarah was fired. She lost everything. And me? I was already moving forward. When I received the final paperwork confirming our divorce was finalized, I didn't feel sadness. No grief. Just relief. One last message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. Well played. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Whoever had warned me, whoever had set this in motion, I never found out who they were. And I didn't care. Because I had one. Sarah had made her choices. And I had made mine. I chose to walk away. And I never looked back. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.